The property we wanted to buy just needed more work than aligned with our operating standards. And here's the thing, we know what we want now. We want updated units. We want properties that don't require constant hands on maintenance and renovation. We're at a point in our lives and in our business where we're not interested in major fixer uppers.
Right. And I think that's an important mindset for landlords to understand. You don't have to chase every deal. You don't have to say yes just because something's available. Being intentional, being selective, that's not being finicky. That's being strategic. We're not in a hurry. We buy right, not fast. And we're building a portfolio that aligns with how we want to operate and how we want to spend our time.
Exactly. And knowing your criteria prevents burnout. And I want to give permission to anyone listening. You're allowed to say no, even when something looks tempting on paper. If it doesn't fit your life, your systems, or your long term vision, it's okay to walk away. Welcome to Your Landlord Resource Podcast. Many moons ago, when I started as a landlord, I was as green as it gets. I may have had my real estate license, but I lacked confidence and the hands-on experience needed when it came to dealing with tenants, leases, maintenance, and bookkeeping. After many failed attempts, fast forward to today, Kevin and I have doubled our doors and created an organized, professionally operated rental property business. Want to go from overwhelmed to confident? If you're an ambitious landlord or maybe one in the making, join us as we provide strategies and teach actionable steps to help you reach your goals and the lifestyle you desire, all while building a streamlined and profitable rental property business. This is Your Landlord Resource Podcast. Well, hello there, landlords. Welcome back to the Your Landlord Resource Podcast. I'm Stacy Casella, and I'm here with my husband and co-host, Kevin Kilroy. And we kind of have a different episode for you here today. We're not doing our usual tactical, here's your checklist kind of show, because here's the thing. As landlords, as business owners, as humans, just trying to keep all the plates spinning, we rarely give ourselves permission to stop and breathe. But last November, something had to give. We had Kid One's wedding, multiple projects going on, and contractors at the house, and then the holidays. So we apologize that we've been absent for a while. But I think we're learning that at the end of the year, we just need to lighten our load. And unfortunately, that at that time, we have to put Your Landlord Resource on hold while we catch our breath.
Yeah, I agree. And when I say 2025 was a busy year, I mean, where do we even start? We had travel, we had weddings, we had rental property projects, we had personal home improvements that cost way more than expected. Shocking, I know. And we somehow still managed to lose 25 pounds each in the middle of all of this chaos.
Yeah, because we didn't have time to eat.
Good point. But honestly, looking back, it felt like we were always moving, always doing, always on to the next thing. And I think that's something a lot of landlords can relate to. You're managing properties, you're dealing with tenants, handling maintenance, trying to grow your portfolio. And somewhere in there, you're supposed to have a life too.
Yeah, right. I mean, God help you if you have kids or a family who are going to rely on your time as well. So today we're going to laugh a little, maybe cringe a little at what didn't go as planned over the last year or so, and then celebrate what did. So I want to take a minute to look back because actually in 2024, we also had one hell of a year end. We had 2 vacancies in Idaho of units that needed quite a bit of work. Some of that work was needed. Some of them were improvements that we wanted to do. But the point is, after working in Idaho for several weeks over November and December of 2024, we looked at each other and we were like, that was way too much to do at the end of the year. We never want to have a fourth quarter like that again. Well, in 2025, we did, and it was way worse than 2024. And we'll get to what went down there in a minute. But I want to be clear that, we'll call it busyness was not all bad. It was actually all really good stuff that all just happened at once. And we have said this before, but I love the holidays. I usually cook for a crowd on Thanksgiving, so I'm prepping for a week, maybe two before that. And then we jump right into the Christmas holiday. And I love to buy the kids presents and do up the house. And I have a big baking project where I make like, I don't know, hundreds of cookies and candies and give them to all the friends and neighbors.
Now, don't be fooled, you guys. She makes just shy of 50 trays and decorates them all with nice cellophane and pretty ribbons, the whole deal. And we even mail some of these to people who have moved out of town, like our kids who live out of state and their friends from college or for people that have moved away. So when Stacy says she has a baking project, that project takes 3 to 4 full days, and that's with help to get those completed and delivered.
Yep. And I love it. And it's one of my favorite things to do. So I need to allow time in my schedule to do it. But the problem is, we're both still working through these times. And by the time New Year's rolls around, you guys, I am burnt out. Usually we take the first couple weeks of January just to get our life back in order. Maybe we'll do a weekend away. We've gone to Hawaii a couple times. And honestly, that is why there is always a gap in content from us to you. You guys, your landlord resource takes quite a bit of time to produce. So we're sorry if you missed us or if you were worried that we weren't coming back. But this year, I just had to put my hands up and take the time that I needed to gather myself.
All right, so here's where we have to laugh at ourselves a little bit. We normally choose a quote unquote word of the year. Like back in episode, I think it was 43, we talked about adaptability being our word for 2024. And we actually lived that one out pretty well, I think. But 2025?
I can't for the life of me remember what our word was. Seriously. I think we chose one, but we definitely did not live it. Whatever it was, we failed enormously.
But you know what? That's actually okay because sometimes life, just intervenes. Growth doesn't always look like achievement. Sometimes it looks like survival. Sometimes it looks like adaptation, even when you didn't plan to adapt.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's an important thing for all of us to hear, you guys. When your intention doesn't match your lived reality, it doesn't mean you failed. It just means life happened. Maybe the growth you needed wasn't the growth that you planned for. We set goals, we set intentions, we make plans, but then real life shows up with weddings and family obligations and property emergencies and personal home projects that end up spiraling out of control. And you kind of just have to roll with it. A prime example of this is the home improvement projects that we're actually still working through. And by the way, it's March 2026 right now. The project started at the end of October and was slated to be completed by November 10th.
Yeah, right. I mean, 2 weeks is now nearly 4 months, and we're still not quite done yet.
You guys, any complication you can imagine that happened on this project. We had to get a new roof because we've been chasing some leaks for a couple years. And we kind of put it off because there's several places in our home where there's no attic space. The roof sits right where our ceiling is. And of course, in those places, that's where we wanted to add some recessed lighting because this home was built in the 1950s. And back then, at least for our home, they put in 2 receptacles or plugs per room just so you could plug in lamps to use for lighting. And as we age, we can't see in the dark. And I cannot tell you how many times I have worn something navy blue thinking it was that I was wearing black or vice versa. So while the roof was off, we decided that this was a time to have our electrician drop in recessed cans throughout the home. Now, all of our rooms have sufficient lighting.
And I think you'll agree that that is likely the one thing that went the easiest.
Yes, that's why I started with that. So the roofing company comes and they tear off the upstairs roof down to the plywood sheathing. And They knew that they had to remove a few pieces of the sheathing so the electrician could get in and do his wiring and install those cans from above. And they were really nice. They said, "Hey, essentially, you have no insulation in your roof. Do you want us to remove all the plywood sheathing and drop new insulation in there after the electrician's done? R38 insulation?" And again, that was awesome. But of course, we did it knowing in the back of our mind, we're thinking that's going to add some cost. But, now's the time to do it.
Change order, cha-ching.
Okay. But wait, there's more. So the upper story goes off without a hitch. The electrician got the cans in, no problem, wired for the new air conditioner, the mini split, or whatever it is we're putting up there, and even added a couple of plugs and switches for us. I wasn't thinking about all the holes that he was going to have to put in the walls to do that. But again, I'm just excited to have more lighting and, modernizing the home. And then a rain delay comes. And this means we can't get the downstairs portion of the roof torn off on schedule, which means we will not have all the work completed before we were supposed to take off to our son's wedding in Mexico, which was happening the second week of November. And here's the thing. I know in the realm of life, it's not a big deal. I mean, how blessed are we that we even get to do these improvements? But I was also stressed beyond belief. A wedding is one thing, but a destination wedding in another country is a whole different animal. We had to bring everything with us: decorations, welcome bags, and all the goodies that go into those bags. There were restrictions on what Mexico would allow us to bring in through customs. So there was some fear that we were going to get pulled aside and charged an enormous tax. I had to be prepared for all that. And for our family alone, we had 6 garment bags with suits and tuxes and fancy dresses. And that's all a lot to organize when you have 6 guys hammering on your roof, and an electrician cutting in your walls, and there's sheetrock dust getting everywhere. Again, not complaining, but the timing of all that work and us leaving could not have been worse.
And on top of that, where we appreciate their attention to detail, there was a lot of questions we had to answer for all the guys working. So that made it even harder for Stacy. Of course, everything for the wedding was perfect. We didn't forget anything, and the 75 welcome bags we provided were enjoyed and well received. And our son and now daughter-in-law did an amazing job at planning and executing that wedding.
Yeah, I mean, it was a total fairy tale wedding for sure. It was a very proud moment for both Kevin and I.
Now, here's the thing. Stacy mentioned the house was built in the 1950s, and back then they used knob and tube for the electrical wiring. We knew there would be some places in the house that still had this wiring, and we asked our electrician if he could rewire those areas. You guys, there were over 40 plugs and switches that needed to be rewired. I mean, we thought there was going to be, at the most, 10? So the entire time we're in Mexico, the electrician was here at our house, crawling under the house and in what small amount of attic space we had to figure all this out. In his words, it was a rat's nest of new and old wires. He had to figure out which wires went to what, which were live, and which wires were dead but never removed. And we knew he had a lot to do because while we're down in Mexico doing all the wedding stuff, we constantly were getting notifications that the house had no power, from the alarm and the smart smoke detectors. Beep, connection lost. Beep, warning, power loss failure. Well, 40 connections and 24 holes in the wall later, the house was rewired and completely safe.
And that's what we have to keep reminding ourselves of. Our house is now safe. Well, safer. But honestly, you guys, all we can think about is the enormous cost of getting all that stuff done. It ended up being almost 3 times what we originally had thought.
Change order, cha-ching.
Well, the thing is, you really don't know what the job entails until you start opening everything up. And we knew that going in.
I mean, the one thing you did do well was tell everyone that they could not work on the home the day after we arrived back from the wedding. And that was super smart.
Yeah, well, it was hard enough to show up after traveling all day and have the electrician still working here, when we walked in from our flight at 6 o'clock at night, I had scheduled our cleaners to come and basically clean up after the electricians were there. And they were only able to clean part of the house because the guys were still working. And let me just say that when I come home after being away, I want to come home to a clean, quiet home. And I did not. The guys got out pretty quickly because they saw the look on my face. But man, the mess they left in Kid Three's room was gnarly. So here I am. I'm exhausted from the wedding and traveling with the whole family and essentially having to be on all the time when we're away. We knew most all of the guests, and being we were all staying at the same resort, there really was no downtime for Kevin and I to catch our breath, which is why I added that quiet day after we returned. I get spent, you guys, and when I'm tired and overwhelmed, I am not a pleasure to be around. So when we walked in from that trip to find guys still there and part of the house a mess, I had all I could do to hold it together. So we sent Kid Three to go to In-N-Out to get food. That's our family tradition, In-N-Out after we fly in from anywhere. And I knew that they had long lines, and I had about 45 minutes to clean Kid Three's room and his bathroom.
I mean, you hauled ass and got it done right in the nick of time.
I did, and I was one crabby person for the rest of the night.
Yeah, well, you were able to sleep in and rest the next day. I mean, before all the chaos really started. And you guys, I'll try to make this fast, but if it could go wrong from that point on, it did. The electrician came back and had to finish up some work, all good there. The roofers came a day later to tear off the downstairs roof, and let's see, what was first?
Water from the rain. You know that rain delay that they had to wait for? All that water was sitting in a low spot on the roof, and when they tore it off, it came right through the tongue and groove boards and all over the dining room floor. Thankfully, it missed the table and chairs by a few inches. So we started that day with a gallon of water on the floor. Then, when they got it all torn off later that afternoon, they called us up there to tell us that the entire bottom level of the home needed all new sheathing. That the 1x8 boards that are original to the 1950s home, that they were rotted and they were cracked, or they had a bunch of holes in them from all the knots falling out. So now we needed about 40 4x8 sheets of plywood. And again, we're asked, you want to replace the old 2-inch thick insulation with new? And of course we said yes.
Another change order. Cha-ching.
That was a big one. God, plywood is so expensive.
Oh my God, yes it is. Anyway, you guys, when the roof is down to just rafters or joists, people have to be careful walking around up there. And not once, not twice, but 3 times did those roofers step through the ceiling and nearly fall into the house. 2 spaces were closets, but one was Kid Three's bathroom, of which that lovely insulation fell down all over his bathroom counter. I mean, it was on his toothbrush, his hairbrush, towels, all his stuff. And let's just say he's not super organized and had everything sitting on the bathroom countertop. I mean, it was in the shower, toilet, hanging from the toilet paper.
You guys couldn't believe it. I mean, you could look straight up into the sky from the bathroom.
Yeah, it was something like you'd see in the movies. The closets weren't as bad because there were shelves that blocked the insulation from hitting the clothes. But that bathroom, that was a mess. But anyway, I kind of want to get on with this because today's podcast is not just about the issues we had to deal with getting the work done in the house.
Yeah, it's just the most recent of all the mishaps, so it's really fresh in our minds.
True. Okay, so the electrician got his work done and pretty much all was well there. The city and building department was the biggest frustration I experienced because here we are, we get all the sheathing replaced, and they are installing the TPO material when the inspector comes by and essentially puts a stop work order because he felt the pitch of the roof was too much to use TPO. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with TPO, it's essentially a thermoplastic polyolefin roofing, a single ply membrane like a thick vinyl used for flat and low slope roofs. It's popular for energy efficiency and durability. And it's known for being cost effective, flexible, and resistant to punctures, tears, and weather. So, for our very slightly sloped roof, it was the perfect solution to replace the tar and gravel that was there before. Now, to use TPO, the pitch cannot exceed something like a 2% grade. The inspector was up there and used his phone to check it, and the first reading came at 1.9. The next one was 2.0 on the dot, so I think we're great. So I'm out there with this inspector and the job foreman, and I'm doing my best to remain calm.
Yeah, you guys, Kevin doesn't get mad often. He's very optimistic and very level headed. I'm the fireball in the relationship, and that day, he was pissed.
Yeah, well, okay, he was new to the city and new to actually being an inspector. And I think he said he'd been on the job for a month, and lucky us, he does everything by the book. And mind you, the top story also had a pitch and TPO, but we had no issues getting that signed off. So, needless to say, we had a couple of days where we all held our breath. The building department had to defer to the planning department, who essentially acts as the HOA for the city. Now, they don't want to use TPO on roofs because neighbors complain that it's an eyesore to look at. And I won't go into all the minutiae of it, but the city no longer allows tar and gravel, which pretty much was the aesthetically approved roof material to install for this pitch of a roof. They suggested using shingles, but then the warranty would be voided because to use shingles, you need a 3% or more grade to the pitch of the roof. So that was out. We offered to lay down this rubberized mat that could go over the TPO, and then it would be covered by rocks to give the look of a tar and gravel, which satisfied the planning department. But then the building department came back and said that that rubber mat is not approved to be used and we can't use it. I mean, I don't know what happened, but we got a call that we got approved to move forward with the TPO, and now all is well.
And I stayed pretty calm throughout this whole issue.
I didn't. I mean, this had me up worrying all night. And the roofer said he was even up at 2 a.m. to research solutions because he was going to lose his ass on the job if it wasn't approved.
I was just waiting to see what they were going to say because I know a few people who could help me out, like the city manager who was Kid Three's baseball coach. So I stayed calm until I had to come in guns a-slinging.
Roadhouse style. Be nice, be nice, be nice until it's time to not be nice.
Exactly. So thankfully, the roof gods came through, and for some unknown reason to us, it was approved. Okay, so you guys, that was the worst of it. Mind you, this was all within a week of us returning from the wedding, 1 week before Thanksgiving. Good thing we were not hosting a big crowd this year.
And where most items are completed, I mean, we still, and it's March of 2026, we still have several parts that have yet to be completed. So, how much do you think we went over budget?
Well, we didn't really budget. We just kind of had a number in mind of what we thought it all was going to cost. And I think last go around with the numbers, we were about 30 to 40,000 over our original number.
I mean, if we're lucky, it'll be that. We still have a lot of outstanding bills to pay and some work to be completed.
Yeah, well, you guys, when you reach that point of what's another 10 grand, then you're nearing the end of the project. So I'll say we're plumb out of our household capital reserves, and it's going to take us quite a while to build those back up. But thank goodness we have a line of credit we can use in an emergency.
Yeah, it's sickening how expensive this project was. But like you said, the house is now safe, secure, it's modernized a little, and efficient with the addition of those solar panels. It seems like every 15 years or so, we have to put in another 100 grand plus into the home just for improvements. And this was a big one.
Yep. New roof, upgraded electrical, new solar panels, which we didn't really talk much about, new air conditioning, replaced a furnace, dry rot repair, and new paint on the house inside and out, not including all of the patchwork that had to be done on, I don't know, 30 something holes in the walls. The last big thing that we had done back in 2016 was a kitchen and bath remodel, which led to new hardwood floors and then paint inside the whole house. And man, I hope we're good for a while after this. I joked with the kids, the next time this place needs a roof, that's going to be their problem.
God willing. I mean, this roof was way more involved than I ever thought it would have been. Okay, sorry, you guys. That went on a lot longer than we expected, but we wanted to kind of set the stage for November. The stress we had to deal with when mentally we were not prepared for it, and essentially why we had to table the podcast for a bit.
All right, let's recap what went on with our actual rental properties in 2025 because that's why we're all here, right? So let's start with Idaho. We finally filled the 2 vacant units that we were working on in late 2024. We finally filled those, and that was a huge relief. Those had been sitting empty longer than we wanted, and getting them rented really kind of felt like a big win.
And we did what we always tell you guys not to do. Back in 2024, we had move outs in November and December. And trying to get those updated, turned, and back on the market took a bit. And we ended up posting them for rent in January, one of the hardest times to fill a vacancy. Looking back, we should have offered extended leases so that they would end more towards the beginning of spring, so we would not be trying to rent them out in the winter months.
Of course, the rent we ended up getting was less than we'd hoped for, but at some point, it's better to take a lower rent of $100 and lose $1,200 over the course of a year than dig in our heels and then lose $1,500 month after month because we want that higher rent. We also recently put a new roof on the Idaho fourplex, which was not cheap, but absolutely necessary. We could have patched it and waited a year or so, but we had several areas with significant leaks, and we just feared that we were just going to keep chasing those leaks. So honestly, that new roof just gave us peace of mind. No more worrying about that every single time there's a storm.
And probably the most fun part about the Idaho story this year was helping Kid 2 remodel his first duplex rental property. That was such a proud parent moment. Watching him take ownership of his own property, making decisions, doing the work, some of it himself, some with contractors. I mean, that was really cool to see.
Yeah, it's this balance of wanting to teach him what we know, but also stepping back and letting him learn independently. Because he's not going to call us for every little decision forever. He needs to build his own confidence and create systems that work for him. And one sweet memory was after we were pretty much all done, we went back with my parents for Mother's Day weekend. And my dad, who's now 85, he's slowing down a bit, but he's still super handy. I mean, he and my brother-in-law built one of our cabins in Lake Tahoe themselves. But anyway, in front of Kid Two's duplex, there was a big chunk of cement missing out of the landing at the bottom of the stairs for the upstairs unit. And my dad brought all his tools back with him to repair it. So Kevin took him over to Home Depot to get the cement, and then he and Kid 2 did the work to make it safe to walk on again. And it's really kind of sweet. We have pictures of them both kneeling down and my dad teaching him, all he has to do.
Yeah, your dad has been a very important influence on all the boys, and they really cherish the time they get to spend with him, learning and having fun. I mean, truly a blessing. Now, Sacramento was a whole different story. Last summer in July, we placed new tenants in what we lovingly call the Jinxed unit. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. The situation is actually going to lead to a future episode on domestic violence laws and how they impact landlords because it's a really important topic that doesn't get talked about enough.
Yep. And it was our first experience with it. And boy, did we learn a lot. So, quick aside, and I'm sorry for jumping around here on the timeline, but I kid you not, After we're boarding our flight home from Mexico, after kid one's wedding in November, knowing that we're going home to a lot of stuff to deal with on our own property, I get a text from one of our tenants in this quote unquote jinxed unit, essentially explaining all the issues that they had been dealing with. And bottom line, you guys, puts in a 14-day notice to move out.
which came out of nowhere. We had no idea there were any issues. So here we are, absolutely exhausted, still corralling the whole family to get on an international flight home, and literally walking to the plane when Stacy gets the text. I could tell by her face it was something bad. And when we get into our seat, she just handed me her phone for me to read what the tenant had sent.
You guys, the first thing wasn't, oh, great, one more thing to deal with. It truly was that I felt bad about what this person, our tenant, had been dealing with. But I also had to keep things in perspective and remember that there's two sides to every story. But the details were pretty telling. Anyway, throw that on top of being absolutely exhausted and coping with all the work being done on the house last November. It was hard not to be affected by it. We had zero experience with domestic violence laws with rentals, and we were calling all the experts to make sure that we didn't mess this up and get a lawsuit on our hands. But we'll do a whole episode on that experience soon. Long and short of it, we learned a lot, we stayed professional, and we created an outcome that worked for everybody that was involved.
Now, let me jump in here and clarify a little bit. Domestic violence does not always mean physical abuse. And in this case, it was more extreme bullying. Regardless, the laws are the same.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm glad you explained that. All right, so back to the Sacramento rental. What else? Oh, we had our first midterm rental tenant, which was another learning experience. Midterm rentals, so those are furnished units where people stay like 30 to 90 days, are different from traditional year-long leases. Different expectations, different turnover rhythm, different pricing strategy. So we had to create and figure out a lot of new procedures for that unit. We also completed the required SB 721 deck and stair inspection, which is a California thing. Our contractor, Jim, handled the whole process, the photos, repairs, everything. And we have all the required paperwork completed and ready to go in case we get called on it. But it's just one more thing to track and budget for as a California landlord.
Lucky for us, we had replaced those stairs about 10 years ago. It ended up we only had one railing that needed to be replaced, so that's all.
Check, check, and check.
So here's the part where we talk about what didn't happen. Because sometimes the deals you don't do are just as important as the ones you do. We lost out on buying a Sacramento four-plex by hours. I mean, literally hours. We were ready to move on submitting our offer, but wanted to crunch a few more numbers. And someone else had already had their offer in and accepted. Just before we were starting the paperwork for the offer, I refreshed the listing and it came up pending. That one stung a little bit because it would have been ideal for an ADU conversion, which is something we're interested in.
Yep. When you can add units and the city is really enthusiastic about having more rentals available, they're going to work with you. So losing that one was kind of a bummer. And then in Idaho, we had an offer accepted on a seven-plex, but we pulled out of that deal before the inspection. The property we wanted to buy just needed more work than aligned with our operating standards. And here's the thing. We know what we want now. We want updated units. We want properties that don't require constant hands-on maintenance and renovation. We're at a point in our lives and in our business where we're not interested in major fixer-uppers.
Right. And I think that's an important mindset for landlords to understand. You don't have to chase every deal. You don't have to say yes just because something's available. Being intentional, being selective, that's not being finicky. That's being strategic. We're not in a hurry. We buy right, not fast. And we're building a portfolio that aligns with how we want to operate and how we want to spend our time.
Exactly. And knowing your criteria prevents burnout. And I want to give permission to anyone listening. You're allowed to say no, even when something looks tempting on paper. If it doesn't fit your life, your systems, or your long term vision, it's okay to walk away. Because walking away from that offer was hard. The property was in a great location and it did have potential, but it needed a lot of work. And Kevin and I had to sit down and have a real serious conversation about our expectations and our future.
And did we want to put ourselves in a bundle of debt to say we own a 7 unit in a great location, even though it didn't align with our financial goals? If we had done that, we likely would have not had any money to make improvements to our personal home. Like Stacy has said many, many times, that she was tired of living in a home with a leaky roof, and our tenants had more amenities in their units than we did in our own home. So even though this was a hard decision, it was the right one for us, especially at this time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's just that we have these lofty goals to buy rental properties and get to that 10 million in equity mark so that we can retire with decent income. And the longer it takes us to get there, it worries me it's never going to happen.
And so, what if it doesn't? I mean, it will at some point. Some way, somehow, we'll get there, but in a manner that's right for us, not with what society or other influencers say is the way to invest in rentals.
You mean Brandon Turner and David Green and Grant Cardone aren't the gurus that I need to emulate?
Hey, they give some good advice, but like what we provide here, we talk about what we know about managing properties, and what we do is not always going to work for everyone. Take the advice that works for you and use that.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so let's get real about what actually consumed most of our year. Because it wasn't just rentals, it was life, it was our big, beautiful, exhausting life. Travel wise, we were all over the place. Early on, like I mentioned, in January, we went to Hawaii for some dedicated relaxation, and we actually really needed that one. We spent 3 various weeks in Idaho helping Kid 2 with his duplex. We went to San Diego for a wedding shower, and then down another time for when we were putting together all the crafty stuff for the wedding. We went to Europe for an adventure, and we walked over 80 miles in 14 days, and oh man, did we have an amazing time. Not a relaxing vacation one bit, but it was an awesome experience. We went to Arizona for our nephew's wedding, and we went to Mexico for Kid One's wedding, which was absolutely incredible. It was nonstop, but we had such a great time visiting with our friends and our family and, doing all kinds of partying with the kids.
And it was really fun to get to know some of their friends a little better. Most of his friends we know from various walks of life, but we met so many new friends over the course of that week. I mean, we are very truly blessed that they include us in much of their lives. We know they don't have to, but we are lucky to have the relationship we do with all the boys. And then we had the personal home improvements that cost literally double what we thought. Some we needed, some was timing, like adding the recessed lights when the roof was off, and some was strategic, like the solar panels. The 30% tax credit on solar panel installation expired on December 31st of 2025, and we had been tossing the idea around for several years. Again, when putting on a new roof, it's the best time to install those, so you can make sure the stanchions that support the panels are waterproof correctly. So given the timing of the roof being replaced and the tax credit expiring, now was the time, and that was still a huge chunk of money we originally did not count on.
But that tax credit's going to come in really handy when we file our taxes, too. And if that wasn't enough, our dog had minor surgery, and that was such a joy. The first couple of nights, Kevin and I took turns sleeping on the couch near her because she had some bad anxiety, and she was really restless while that anesthetic wore off. If anyone has to deal with a 55-pound lab having to wear that cone of shame for 2 weeks, God bless you. She was like a bull in a china shop once she was feeling better. So this was beginning of December here, right? So now add in the holidays. Plus, my dad is experiencing some mild cognitive decline, probably early dementia or something. So we're adjusting expectations there. and making changes to take some pressure off of him. Oh, and Kevin's car was in the shop for 12 weeks. 12 weeks.
Yeah, that was brutal. I'm just glad it was all under warranty and they gave us a loaner car to drive. Okay, a sideline here, folks. If you buy a new car, bundle an extended warranty into the loan. Best decision we ever made, and it saved us nearly $12,000 with all the repairs we had to make to the car.
I'm going to jump in here real quick, though, and say that $12,000 was just on this last go around on the warranty. We also had previously done probably close to $3,500 of warranty work before this episode here.
Yeah. And like I said, having the loaner car for that whole time, I mean,
Huge.
great. But here's today's theme. It's weddings, capital improvements to both our personal home and the Idaho rental, travel, and also health. Because as we said before, in the middle of all this chaos, and it's all good stuff, no complaints, but in the midst of all this, we each lost 25 pounds, which I'm very proud of, by the way.
Me too. It's taken intention and discipline because at our age, well, at least for me, it doesn't come off that easily as it did in my 20s and 30s. This menopause mom is really trying to change up the eating habits, eating less, eating cleaner, listening to my body, and keeping it moving. But honestly, like Kevin said, none of this year was terrible. It was just a lot. And I think what happened is we unintentionally ended up living 2024's word, which was adaptability, because we adapt constantly. Every single week brought something new to navigate. We are adapting to having aging parents. We are adapting to having adult children where sometimes they don't want advice, but just have to have someone to listen when they call. Because we're finding ourselves moving into less of the parental role and more of the friendship stage now with them. We're adapting to different real estate markets. Prices are high, but rents aren't gaining traction like they were a couple years ago. And most of the properties that we like, the math ain't mathin'. They're all coming in with significantly monthly losses, which for some might be okay, but not for us. We're looking at retirement right in the face, and we want to increase our income, not offset it.
So that brings us to 2026, and I do realize we're 3 months into it already, but our word for the year is reset.
Yes, reset. And we chose that word very intentionally because here's what we realized. It's really hard to achieve your goals when you're always chasing your tail. When you're always in motion, you're always saying yes, you're always on to the next thing. You never actually stop and evaluate if you're headed in the right direction. Reset for us means intentional pause. It means boundaries. It means clarity. It means asking, is this aligned with what we actually want? Or are we just doing it because it's in front of us? And it means taking a break from the podcast once in a while.
And I think landlords need to reset too. Burnout is invisible until it isn't. You can be making money, growing your portfolio, checking all the boxes, and still feel completely drained. And that's not sustainable.
No, exactly. So reset isn't about stopping. It's about recalibrating. It's about making sure that the effort you're putting in is actually building the life you want, not just filling your calendar. And here's the honest truth. 2025 was amazing. We traveled to incredible places. We celebrated huge family milestones. We made progress on our properties. We lost weight. We grew this podcast. But it was also extremely stressful because even when travel is personal, there's a lot of work that goes into planning that travel and all you have to do to prepare for being away from work and from home. We're recording this episode on a Sunday when we should be resting. And that's the realization that we came to. If you don't schedule downtime, it does not exist.
Yeah, and the hard part is we love what we do. We love the podcast. We love our properties. We love traveling. But when everything is always on, you lose the ability to just be present, to just enjoy a moment without thinking about what's next. Because every time we have unscheduled time on our calendar, something comes up. In April, when we were helping Kid 2 on his rental in Idaho, we told him we had 2 weeks free. He said, "Oh, I only need you here for a week." And we were like, "Great, that works." We have lots of things we can do with that extra time, like clean the garage or, God forbid, rest. But once we were there and working, we ended up extending the week to 10 days. And then when everything was still not done, we pushed it out to 2 weeks. And the thing is, we were going back in May for a long weekend with Stacy's parents to spend time with Kid 2. And you know what we did? We did more work on the duplex. But that's what we do. We want to be able to step up and give our time to help when needed, especially when it comes to the kids. But we also, given all that we are saying here today, need to be more cognizant of our personal time so we don't work ourselves into the same place at the end of every year, where we are playing catch up in November and getting really stressed and overwhelmed come the holiday season.
True. So, listen, like you said, for the most part, we're in a place where we have the ability to step up and give our time. But I'll also say it was so exciting and fun to see his vision become a reality. From him searching for a property, to him sending over the listing for us to check out, to us flying back to walk the property with him putting in the offer, and then being creative with it. Then him getting the keys and us helping him remodel it, all in a matter of weeks. And like you said, we had the time to give, so we did. And I think we just have to start being a little bit more selective about giving our time away and being able to protect it so we can slow down a little and not live life constantly moving from one thing to another.
Right. I guess we need to work on prioritizing our personal time.
Yep, we probably do. So, what have we already handled in the first 2 months of 2026? We have that jinxed unit vacant and did a quick flip on that and actually already have a couple promising prospects. In one unit, we had a stackable washer and dryer go out, so we had to get that replaced. We had a new midterm renter go in for several months, and the tenant from last year, the midterm tenant who works for the A's baseball team, has contacted us to rent again through September. So hell yeah, huge win there. We had a couple of family members with vacancies in their rental, so we helped them place new tenants. And finally, we spent a week in Idaho turning one of the units we remodeled in 2024 because those tenants only stayed 1 year. Not a huge deal, but it was a good excuse to get back and visit with Kid 2. We were able to enjoy dinner every night with him, which was really nice. We had some things to do to the unit that we didn't get done before, and some repairs to some issues that came up with the improvements that we did prior to this tenant moving in.
We learned that even though quote unquote cabinet paint says it does not need primer, you really, really need to make sure the surface is clean of all oils so it'll stick. Because we had painted the kitchen cabinets and the ones with the most use had a lot of chip paint, and that was a bummer, but we were able to take our time. We touched up all the paint in the rooms. We had to replace all of the 10-year smoke and carbon monoxide detectors in this unit because they were over 7 years old. And if you have any experience with those, often they don't last the full 10 years. Usually they go out, well, for us anyway, somewhere between 7 and 9 years. So we just go ahead and replace them at 7 years.
So looking forward, what's actually on the horizon for 2026? We have several units that are coming up for renewal, and it's our policy to contact our tenants 60 days before with a renewal offer to allow them plenty of time to respond. This year, we're implementing a utility fee to cover our costs with water, sewer, trash, and recycling.
Yeah, we'll be doing a short episode on that soon. We're still looking to purchase a new rental property. We're open to out-of-state opportunities in Idaho so we can semi-self-manage with Kid 2's help. We're open to other states too, but the deal has to be perfect. And yes, we know that's a tall order. We want a slower year with fewer commitments that are real time sucks. We still want to travel. We have Hawaii coming up soon, San Diego to visit Kid 1, and Idaho again to visit Kid 2. and truly visit, not working on the units and only having dinner. We want to go back so I can hike with him on the weekend and Stacy can cook and meal prep with him. Stacy has a girls' trip with her oldest and closest friends in May and is hoping for another girls' trip to see some Christmas markets, maybe in Quebec City in November.
Yeah, we also want to focus on working to save money because this year we spent a lot on improvements, way too much. And we want to work on cleaning out the house, purging all the stuff that's accumulated all over all these years. So much stuff that we no longer need, but we both seem to have an issue with parting with. Plus, we need to sort through years of papers that we've been holding on to that we no longer need.
So our 2026 word is reset, but maybe reset with a bit of purging. Purging physical items and purging the mindset of being busy all of the time, because that did not work well for us in 2025. We're learning that sometimes less is more, and we're focusing more on being present for our business, for our family and friends, and for each other.
And looking past 2026, time's ticking for us. We're thinking that in the next few years, we're going to become grandparents, God willing, and life will take on a whole new meaning and focus at that point. At some point, kid two may be getting married in a couple years, so we want to be focused and present for that wonderful time. And both of our parents are aging. Time is the biggest gift where they're concerned, and we need to spend as much quality time with them as possible.
So, if you're listening to this and feeling like things haven't gone as planned, we just want to let you know we're right there with you. You're allowed to be human. You can build wealth and still feel exhausted. You can be successful and still need a break.
Yeah, and I don't want to view the need for reset as a failure. It's intentional growth. It's giving yourself permission to prioritize rest and clarity and boundaries. Owning rentals isn't just about numbers. It's about life that's woven into roofs and relationships and contractors and curveballs. And sometimes the most professional thing that you can do is pause and make sure that you're still headed where you actually want to go. So here's the big takeaway. We survived, we learned, and we're ready to reset. And we're ready for aligned growth, not just growth for growth's sake.
Let me take a minute to let you know what to expect with this podcast. We've kind of gone back and forth, and what we're hoping to do is still have an episode each week. But every other week, we'll be doing shorter episodes. We will address small issues that are still important, but we don't have 30 minutes of content on them.
Yeah. I like to listen to a lot of podcasts, and I love when there are shorter episodes that go for like 10 to 15 minutes, ones that I can listen to when I'm driving to the store and back, or when I'm taking a quick walk to get some steps in.
So that's what we're hoping to pull off. Still get content out to you, but not to where we're overwhelmed by the process. And we have some good episodes on the horizon. We're talking estate planning that includes your rental properties, the risk of renting to students and freelancers, and at some point, domestic violence laws and how they impact landlords and property management.
Yep. There's always something pertaining to landlording that we can talk about. So, winding down, we want to say thank you so much for being a part of our community, for tuning in and emailing us questions and trusting us to help guide you on your journey of being a rental property owner. We would love for you to connect with us. We have a great newsletter with all kinds of tips and articles for rental property owners that you can sign up for. It's free. We're going to link that in the show notes, along with links to our private Facebook group. That's all landlords. And of course, we have our social media sites. And if you guys love what you hear, would you do us a huge favor and leave us a kind review? We really need other listeners to know how our podcast has helped you and what you love about listening to us each week. You can find a link in the show notes for those reviews. And while you're at it, would you also follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform? Because your downloads each week allow us to grow and reach other self-managing landlords.
So take a breath, reset,
And remember, you've got this, landlords.